My name is Shaggy, the Opinionated Hippie, and today I'm going to be reviewing the latest Frank Zappa release, Zappa 75, Zagreb, Ljubljana. I don't think you pronounce J's. I think they're like Y's. I might be wrong. This came out on October 14th. Today is October 20th. It is 6 days after the release. Listen to this a number of times. It is a 2 CD release. Comes with a pretty decent, not too big booklet. Has some information. Has an interview with Davey Moore in this. And then it's got just simple packaging. Not a big box. Just your awesome, typical, straightforward packaging. As you can see on the back, this is from 2 shows in Yugoslavia in 1975, fall 1975, the November 21st, November 22nd. They have taken songs from both shows to essentially duplicate the set list for both shows. So the idea was it's the best version or best sounding version, or it's a version representing one of the 2 shows so that you have essentially a complete show over the course of the 2 discs. In this band, let's get all the facts out of the way first, and then we'll do the opinions. In this band, you have on bass, the original bass player from the Mothers of Invention. He's also doing silly vocals. We're not going to say his name because he's kind of a horrible person. He's in prison for horrible things that he did to people who are too young to know better. Not to know better, but you know what I'm saying. He should have known better, and yeah. Not a bad bass player. He does a really good job of locking into grooves and like just creating this really almost metronomic rhythmic pattern that people can play over. There are a couple jams on here where he's quite effective. He does hold his own on the bass. You also have another somewhat problematic individual who also has a history of, not with minors, but with women, unfortunately, invading their personal space in the worst way possible, who's been with them since October of 73. Saxophone, vocals, excellent saxophone playing. By this point, he's starting to fall into routines, and now that Norma Bell is in this band, you can really contrast the difference between a more drawn-out, sort of dramatic saxophone style in Norma Bell versus this really hyperkinetic, frenetic, frantic style with this other person. I'll say his name once, and from here on out, he will be the singer-saxophone player, but that is Napoleon Murphy Brock. This would be his last band he was with. He would continue on to the Winter 76 tour, as would this entire band, except for Norma Bell, who was on sax, some vocals, not vocals much as like Lady Bianca was in Fall 76, but more vocals like saying lines and Honey, Don't You Want a Man Like Me, and just little ad-lib parts here and there. Also on saxophone, great saxophone player. She gets a couple really good solos on here. She was only in this band from November 1st through December 9th. Midway through the tour to the end of the tour, there was a New Year show she did not show up on. This band started in late September. We have Andre Lewis on keyboards and vocals. I like Andre Lewis's keyboard style a lot. He is a very prog style, a very synth. He's very much of the mid 70s, and what I think is a good way. I think it helps. It gives him a different kind of voice to a lot of Frank's music. He doesn't really get to shine as much on this release as he does on even something that's like FC Ozzy or like on tapes that are from this tour. Norma Bell is given a solo in Advanced. I'm pretty sure it's a Norma Bell solo in Advanced Romance. That would normally be an Andre Lewis solo. He doesn't get that. In fact, Frank even says, "Look what they did to Andre," and then I'm pretty sure Norma Bell does a sax solo. So that's interesting. And then on drums, you have Tiny Terry Ted Bozzio, who I think makes some songs, utterly saves some songs on this, and at other times, his limitations as a drummer or his not being Chester Thompson and Ralph Humphrey as a drummer hinder some of the songs. But that's who's in the band. This band, again, would tour in the fall of 75. Norma Bell would leave at the end of this regular tour. She would not come back in winter 76. They would also tour in winter 76. Elsewhere on this channel, I have ranked and reviewed all the tours. I gave this tour and I ranked it as number 15 out of the 26 that I have deemed tours. I ranked the winter version, the 76 version, at number 21 out of the 26. Of the albums that have been released from this tour, the FC Aussie, which was a document of some Australian shows in winter 76, I ranked that all the way up at number 17. I really like that release. I think that has some of the songs that are also on here, but the guitar solos are longer or better, or Frank just has a better idea of what he wants to do with the songs as far as his guitar playing goes. And so I rank that at 17. That will be higher ranked than this is going to turn out to be. Just letting you know that now, preparing you for disappointment. But I like this release. I'm just saying. I also really like FC Aussie. There was another release called Joe's Camouflage, which was rehearsal material from this tour with a different band. Some of the same members, but some different members who would then leave and go like to join other artists. But some of the same material is there. Material that would be dropped by November, so we don't get to hear it on this release, but it was part of the early tour's repertoire. And then there's another one called Joe's Menage, which is like a 45-minute slice of the November 1st show, the first show that Norma Bell sat in as a special guest. I don't think she was a band member, she was like a guest. And that's got some good moments, but I ranked that way down at number 45 just because it was this 45-minute slice. Not the best sound, had some good moments, but it was number 45. I kind of enjoy it, but I just don't ever listen to it. Wow, I just realized how crazy my hair is up there. That's insane. But anyways, yeah. At the end of this, after I discuss it, I will let you know where I rank this one, if I give it a number, out of the 60 or so that have been released so far after Frank passed away. So anyways, going back to my ranking this as number 15, part of the reason I rank this as 15 is because over the course of the tour, early on, you had a rawness and you had a set list repertoire, which the songs that really elevated the early part of the tour, that made the early part of the tour probably the most exciting part of this tour, those songs were eventually dropped. Any Downers, which was just this 2-chord vamp, just with simple riff, dun 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 dun, just that back and forth slowly with Frank just tearing up the 6 strings, just really deep, indulgent, heavy metal, just riffing, going crazy, just leaving the band behind. Terry Ted trying his best to keep up. That was kind of dropped by this point in the tour. There was this interesting Sleep Dirt Black Napkins medley combo that was played early on. There was a weird song called Swallow My Pride, Duke of Prunes, Apostrophe. There were some really interesting song choices early in the tour that were eventually dropped over the course of the tour, and the set list began to sort of gel and solidify and become what would essentially be almost the exact same set list every night in winter 76. Like 75 is the year when Frank started to I'm just going to kind of play the same set list every night. And by the end of this tour, that's kind of what was happening. And there were nights when he varied it, and he was always, it was Frank, so you always was that element of anything could happen. But for the most part, he was starting to the same order of the songs. And what we get here is not as high a ranking as a number 15 tour, because the stuff that helped raise the fall 75 tour to 15 is not present in here. And when I preview this, I was really, really excited about some of the stuff on here. There's obviously early versions of Zoot Allures, Chunga's Revenge. You get Prototype as their label, and versions of Filthy Habits and Wind Up Working in a Gas Station, which turned out to be pretty fantastic things. But there were some things going into it that I knew I was not going to enjoy. A Poodle Lecture, never a fan of the Poodle Lecture. The Freak Out medley, consisting of How Could I Be Such a Fool, I Ain't Got No Heart, I'm Not Satisfied. I knew that would possibly turn me off. Illinois Enema Bandit, Honey Don't You Want a Man Like Me, switch those the order. Never a fan of those songs. But some of this stuff I actually like on this. And so, yeah. So I like this release. I've listened to it a number of times. I've really, really enjoyed it. But I think it has limitations. I think the band itself is a limitation. When Frank is not on guitar playing because he has to sing, The sound is kind of thin. It doesn't quite hold up, and it almost seems like Terry's doing the bulk of the work. And every once in a while, Andre Lewis has some nice keyboard sounds that go in there. But it's just kind of a weak, thin sound. And I think some of the songs suffer from that. When Frank is on guitar, and this would be the last band, not the tour, Winter 76 tour, but this would be the last band where he was the lone guitar player. From here on out, every tour either had Ray White, Adrian Belew, or Ike Willis. It literally had one of those three people in every incarnation from Out of Here. Yes, there were other guitar players, Denny Wally, Warren Cucurullo, and yes, Denny Wally was on the Bongo Fury tour, but he's not on this tour. So Frank is the lone guitar player for the last time on this in the Winter 76 tour. And when he's not playing guitar, I think there's sort of an anemic quality to some of the songs. Andre Lewis doesn't get enough chance to shine on this release. Every time Norma Bell solos, Norma Bell's in the band. Every time Norma Bell solos, she is fantastic. I think she has a solo in both. Pretty sure these are her solos. They're a little more dramatic and narrative feeling than the other person's more frenetic, frantic stuff. I think she has one in Black Napkins. It's pretty decent, pretty good. And Advanced Romance. Back-to-back songs she gets solos in, which is weird. But they're both really, really good. So that was one of my complaints about this. What else was I going to say? I think that's all I was going to say was the sound of the band. And also there were a number of songs where Terry just can't do it. Like, there's a whole bunch of songs on here that the 73 and 74 band played, and songs that are on the most recent release prior to this, the Zappa Erie one, which had some 74 shows on there. The Freak Out medley on here, the How Could I Be Such a Fool, I Ain't Got No Heart, I'm Not Satisfied. Other than the I'm Not Satisfied, which works, How Could I Be Such a Fool and I Ain't Got No Heart are just feel very stiff to me and just very straightforward rock. And at one point at the end of like How Could I Be Such a Fool, when they're kind of just jamming on that ending riff, Bozio's doing this almost straight as can be, Charlie Watts 4/4 just driving that rhythm. When if you go back and listen to the Zappa Erie shows, it's almost that same exact arrangement, but those two drummers are able to put like there's a little just breathing room in it. So even though it's just this like dun 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 dun, it's almost like dun dun dun, like you're just easing into it, like you're funking into that downbeat. Just there's a little more looseness in it, and I think How Could I Be Such a Fool and I Got No Heart suffer from that rigidity. Towards the end in the solos, Camarillo Brillo, I don't think Terry's figured out yet. It would get a little bit better on the later tours. But there's a stiffness to that wasn't there with the Humphrey and Thompson versions. And the I'm the Slime, I think is just rough as a song. There's that funk is not there. And San Bernardino, the actual song itself, the funk is not there. The solos are good in both. And the ending jam in San Bernardino is kind of sick. But the songs themselves, even though Frank would still play these throughout Bozio's tenure with the band, they are songs where like Frank had to write new songs and get stuff that was more Bozio style, because you can tell that like these sound like bad cover songs. Like, I don't know. I am just, as someone who listens to way too much Frank Zappa, I miss Thompson. I even miss Humphrey on those 73, 74 era songs. So that's the complaints. The one last complaint is, I think I would say that there are some really, really good guitar solos, but I don't think any of them are like must-hear guitar solos. If I were to make like a top 10 list of solos that were from his post-release, even maybe a top 20 of his post-release stuff, I'm not sure any single solo on here would make it, but the soloing is always good. And I think there's only one that I'm like, typical, where everything else I'm like, that's pretty good. And there are moments in each one where Bozio and Frank really connect. And there are moments where Estrada really has just like special moments. I said his name, I didn't want to. Where the bass player has special moments and kind of pushes the envelope. It's 15 minutes already, man. People crazy. I'm going to go by song. Before I go by song, I was trying to think of like how I would best how would I rank this band? This album, this release. And I would say, like, I was trying to use some sports analogies, and I was like, it's definitely not a home run. And I was like, I'm not even sure it's a triple, but it's probably maybe like a double with a stolen base afterwards, or maybe a double and then you get to third on an air, or, you know, it's like you tie a soccer game, but then maybe you lose. No, you don't lose. You tie the game and maybe you win with extra shots. So it's kind of a win, but you win with the extra kicks. In basketball, it's more like maybe making a 2 and not a 3. No, it's like taking a 3-pointer, getting fouled, but then missing your 4th foul shot. But then the one I ultimately came up with, which was my favorite analogy, it's a hockey one. It's like you score 2 goals, right? And you're trying to get that hat trick and score your 3rd goal, and there's an open net at the end of the game, and you have a shot at that open net, and you miss the goal, but your team still wins. So you don't get your hat trick, but your team still wins. That's the way I kind of feel about this release. It's a good release. I'm going to listen to this release a number of times. The sound is pretty decent. I wish there was more presence with the bass and drums, but the solos are clear. Frank's particularly, the saxophones are clear. Lewis could be higher in the mix on keyboards. But I don't really have any complaints about the sound, especially considering it's in Yugoslavia in 1975. So anyways, those are kind of the way I approach it. I'm going to go through the songs. I'm going to tell you where I would rank it numerically out of the, 60 that have been released so far, I think is what we're at, roughly. So it opens up with something called Managua, where everybody comes out on stage. They make some noises. There's some weird, crazy singing from the bass player and the singer saxophone player. Nice keyboard work. They go into Steamford, and there's an opening Steamford Jam. Again, Lewis has some really nice sounds in here. They kind of ease into Steamford. Frank shows up. They ease into it. Some nice solos in Steamford. Frank's guitar playing is just purposeful and tight and high energy. Great song. I've over the years come to absolutely love Stinkfoot as a show opener. Frank gets a talk. There's a guitar solo. It's loose. They get a joke around. The only problem with it is a poodle lecture follows. This poodle lecture is still early. There's no man, and he doesn't have to go out and get a job. Instead, there's a roll of toilet paper that Frank wants everybody to imagine is a poodle. He doesn't think they know about poodles. Ask them if they know what a poodle are. But then again, dogs and sexual gratification. Not sure what Frank's fascination with that is. The only thing good about this is it's sort of an early poodle lecture, so it's shorter than it would be, and you get to hear Frank's development of what would become a standard for like a year and a half. So then we get a Dirty Love, which has some saxophone arrangement over the dun 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 with some saxophone blowing that I don't think works. I don't think it's needed. It just muddles up the sound. Just let Frank's guitar carry the load. And then we get the Freak Out medley, which, how could I be such a fool? Kind of a disappointment, kind of stiff. I Ain't Got No Heart, and I'm Not Satisfied, which just kills. Love that song. I think every tour should have dropped in and I'm Not Satisfied in the middle of just a bunch of songs. Drop in that 2-minute beauty. So the first 7 songs, other than the Stinkfoot, I don't think quite get off the ground for me. We get to song number 8, and this is when things start to really get good. We get an early version of Black Napkins, the Norma Bell solo. I'm pretty sure it's Norma Bell. And then, again, I don't read liner notes, so there's a whole bunch of pages in here, and they may clearly tell me who is doing the solo. I did not look that up. I assume somebody would correct me in the credits if I was wrong. But if it's not a Norma Bell solo, the other saxophonist is really doing a better job than he normally does of playing a solo. And then a Frank guitar solo. One of the first releases that came out after Frank passed away was Frank Zappa Plays the Music of Frank Zappa. The opening track on that is the other Black Napkin solo. This is the one from the 21st. It is the one from the 22nd that is on there. I think the one from the 22nd is better, but it's nice that we have both solos. Again, I've said this many times. I will always say it. They could release every single Black Napkin solo on a massive disc box set, and I will buy that and love it, and it will be my favorite thing ever, other than anything that came out in 74, probably. Or Leather. Black Napkins is good. Advanced Romance is pretty good. I like the energy of the song. This is the only Frank solo that I'm not really engaged in. I think that vamp, I think, limits Frank and his soloing, and I just don't think there's much to the vamp. Norma Bell gets a nice short solo in here and deprives Andre of his, sadly. Then my 2 absolute surprises, the things that blew me away, something I normally dread, the Honey Don't You Want a Man Like Me and the Illinois Anima Bandit. The arrangement of Honey, especially Bozio's drumming, but even like Lewis's kind of minimal but essential keyboard work. Love both of those things. Bell's doing some of the parts, the vocal parts in there. And then the Illinois Enema Bandit has one of the best Illinois guitar solos ever. It's kind of short, nowhere near as epic as those like 81 ones, those 82 ones, those 80s ones when he would add other vamps in it. But there is a intensity to this. It hits hard. It hits quickly. One of my favorite guitar solos is the Illinois. Easily, like, I don't like that song, so having a long guitar solo in some of the versions just like drags it out. And there's a really good Illinois Enema Bandit on one of the 76 shows that's maybe the best one ever. But as far as just the guitar solo and its intensity and its purposefulness and its getting things done quickly and to the point, I love this Illinois Enema Bandit solo. One of the highlights of this disc, of this release for me. Carolina Hardcore Ecstasy, always love that song. Sped up a little more than I think it was on the previous tour. Not as redundant as it was on the previous tour. I think a little part of each chorus was cut out, or each verse, or however it's written. I like the guitar solo in this. Not one of the best, but it hits hard. It hits well. Then we get an almost perfect run of songs. We're still on disc 1. You get the We're Only In It For The Money medley. Lonely Little Girl, which features some fantastic Zappa guitar playing. Take Your Clothes Off When You Dance, the sort of pseudo-reggae version that actually works as a nice Lewis keyboard solo. What's the Ugliest Part of Your Body? A short little minute plus of that expertly slides into da-na-na. Just a heavy, hard-hitting Chunga's Revenge. I think saxophone players get solos, keyboard players get solo, Frank gets a solo. Frank's solo evolves into this really minimalist sort of Middle Eastern flavored 5. I'm pretty sure this is where the 5-5-5 jam is. I tried to count it. I'm pretty sure it is. Not good at counting this. I'm pretty sure the 5-5-5, at least on the original, the one that got released, is like 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 1 2 3, right? Something like that. I'm pretty sure this is where that jam comes in, is at the end of this Chunga's. But there's just a really nice, the jam kind of reminds me of some of the jams on the Petit Wazoo tour, things you might hear on Little Dots or on Imaginary Diseases. It's kind of got that slow, very hypnotic groove, slightly Middle Eastern, over which like Frank and the drummer are just like laying waste to the scenery, but that groove just kind of continues steady and hypnotic in the back. Excellent Chunga's Revenge. The whole thing clocks in at just under 20 minutes. We get a drum solo, 2 drum solos. Both drum solos are on here. They're kind of different. The first one's your more full-on attack. The one on the main set is the full-on attack Terry one. The other one that is on one of the bonus tracks, I think, is the little more key effort. I think there's more percussion involved. It just seems a little more Grateful Dead-ish in its explorations. After the drum solo, we get an early Zoodalures. There is the other Zoodalures from the second show that is a bonus track. And these are both good. You get that skeletal version, somewhat skeletal version of the main theme. You get some soloing. You get some sort of randomness that turns into a pretty good jam. But both of them clock in under 8 minutes. And by Winter 76, we're getting 15-minute Zoodalures. And yes, some of that is the whole Ship Ahoy jam, but that's a part of Zoodalures. And so it's interesting. They're neat from a completionist aspect because you're really getting a different version of the song, a song that would like stick around for a couple years, for a tour, then disappear, and then come back strong in the 80s. So it's interesting to hear that being played with, but I can't say either one of these versions is like a must-hear version, but they are good, and they're good listens. Then you get Filthy Habits. It's pretty much almost the main theme. You're not getting that dun 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 dun, that really fast riff before the solo, but you get the dun 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 dun. Then you get some pretty nice, about a good 3 minutes of soloing that's pretty good. Kind of gets pretty intense in the end. The whole thing is kind of ominous and Black Sabbath-y, and it's just Frank playing the guitar. Again, I wouldn't even say it's as out there or evil or deep as like those early Any Downer solos from like October or other October stuff, but it is, I think, one of the heaviest moments on this release. Then you get the Camarillo Brillo Muffin Man. Muffin Man solo, again, is kind of short, just kind of, hey, we're ending the show. I'm not going too deep. It's got some really nice riffs in it, and there are really nice moments in it. It's just not like the most epic of all Muffin Mans, but it's pretty good. And then you get the I'm the Slime, San Bernardino. I'm the Slime, I think I'm the Slime ends, and then you get San Bernardino. And again, the songs themselves, I think, are kind of clunky, but the solo in I'm the Slime is great. I love the solo. Again, not your most epic, but it's just some really nice phrases, some really nice riffs. Frank gets some nice licks in. The energy is good. But the San Bernardino, that ending jam in San Bernardino just sounds like no other ending jam in San Bernardino. It just kind of goes on. It gets very heavy, almost gets very, very distorted in a weird noise sort of way. A really nice ending to a song that kind of doesn't quite click for me for most of it, but it's worth it for that jam. And then you got the bonus tracks. And the first bonus track is a 5-minute prototype version of Wind Up Working in a Gas Station, which I'm assuming, based on other things I know about Frank, whenever he would debut a song in sort of its instrumental version, or he would have only a handful of lyrics and he would say those, it usually occurs. I couldn't say that word. I was thinking about occurs in another song. I'm betting that the Wind Up Working in a Gas Station, which is instrumental and is essentially a jam, is part of Chunga's Revenge, because after it they have the drum solo, and I'm imagining they would do this and then go right into the drum solo, and then you get Pseudo Lures. So I've imagined you have the tail end of Chunga's Revenge, which is the Wind Up Working in a Gas Station, into the drum solo, into Pseudo Lures. The actual body of the song just kind of sounds like a backing track for Wind Up Working in a Gas Station. This song really is about the vocals, but the solo, the jam that accompanies, that takes up almost like more than half of the song, is epic. It's perfect. It's awesome. It is also one of the highlights of this release. So that's what you get, man. You get 2 CDs worth of Fall 75 stuff. Those are my thoughts on it. I've gone almost a half hour on this release. When I released the 55 releases, and I think there's been 5 or 6 released since then, I had at number 28, so it's now probably 30 or 31, the 88 show that was released about a year and a half ago. I had at number 29, Philly 76. And then I had right before that the 81 Halloween release. I would put this release, 2 CDs, 75, right between the 81 Halloween release and the 88 show release. I think I will probably listen to it slightly more than the 88 release, just because some of the 88 stuff, to me, as I've said on 88 videos, has a very Zappa's in Vegas. It's a review. We're doing, 4 weeks. Come here, Zappa's greatest hits. It was good. The arrangements are fantastic, right? It's in the middle of the list, and this is Zappa's releases, so that's a good middle. But the solos are not that good. And though these solos on the 75 I don't think are as epic as other 75 or 76 era solos, I do think they're better than the 88 solos. And really, ultimately, the solos are kind of the thing that get me through a lot of this. Just because the songs don't differ all that much from night to night. But I would put it behind the 81 Halloween, only because that's 3 complete shows from 81 Halloween, and those solos are stupid ridiculous, and the set lists are pretty good. So it's pretty much right in the middle of the pack, this release. Yeah. And that's all I got to say. 30 minutes on 2 discs is all I have to say, people. I'm excited to actually go back and listen to this again and go, man, I wish I had mentioned that, because I forgot to mention that, because I know there's something I'm going to mention or realize I messed up on. But yeah, that's it. If you listen to it, let me know what you think. Let me know why I'm wrong. Rail at me for ranking this so low. Let me know, rail at me for ranking this so high. You know how comments work. And if you are better at picking out who is soloing on the sax, and you know who is soloing on what solo, let me know. I'm pretty sure I got it right, though, I think. But anyways, who knows? I'm probably wrong. Completely wrong. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, share, whatever. Comment. And most importantly, go listen to music, people, because that's the point of all this. Peace, y'all. Talk to you later.